Hello and welcome to Insights in Action with Orange 142, where we interview business owners and agency leaders to uncover the journeys, the strategies, and the insights that drive their success. At Orange 142, we're all about transforming brand stories into impactful digital experiences through innovative media and marketing solutions. And today I'm very lucky to be joined by Dr. Bruce Seideman of Orthopedic Associates of Manhasset. How's it going, Dr. Bruce?
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I would love to just, for all the listeners, I would love to understand a little bit more about your background and what brings you to where you are today.
I am an orthopedic surgeon. I went to medical school in Albany, New York, and then I did my residency and training at Beth Israel Hospital on the Harvard Teaching Service in general surgery, and then 3 years at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in Manhattan in orthopedic surgery. And then I was a fellow in total hip and total knee replacement at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. In 1987, I joined a orthopedic surgery private practice group called Orthopedic Associates of Manhasset in Manhasset, New York. And I've been in that practice for 37 years now. We have grown over the years, and we've been actively on staff at St. Francis Hospital in Roslyn, New York, and North Shore University Hospital in Manhasset for all these years.
Wow, quite the experience, quite the lengthy experience. To bring it back to the beginning, what initially drew you to specialize in orthopedic surgery, particularly in hip and knee replacements?
A lot of people, I think, choose a specialty from the exposure they get as medical students
Mm.
and seeing how the residents in the programs where they're going to medical school enjoy their work, also seeing whether the types of patients and problems that you see are something that interests you individually. I initially thought I wanted to be a cardiologist. I was interested in cardiac physiology, but after I did orthopedic surgery rotations as a medical student, I came to believe that the orthopedic surgery residents were the happiest residents of all the residents in the hospital, and that really took hold with me a lot. So a lot of the other residents felt overworked and weren't happy with what they're doing, and it seemed like the orthopedic surgery residents were running around, happy to take care of patients and thrilled with what they were doing. So that initially interested me, and I was also an athletic um, individual my whole life, so sports injuries interested me. But then once I got into my training, I became more interested in hip and knee replacement within orthopedic surgery. So that's what I chose to be my subspecialty training and the focus of my practice.
Wow. Yeah, isn't that so interesting? I come from a family of doctors, and it's so interesting to see how before they start residency, they have an idea of this is what I want to do, and then going through and actually doing, you know what, actually I would like to do this because you get to live it. You get to live a little bit of the day in the life of what that is. It's always been unique to me.
Yeah, exactly. When you're on call at night with a medicine resident, it's a very different experience from being on call at night with an orthopedic surgery resident. And
Yeah.
that's how you come to learn where you think you're going to fit in best in the whole situation.
Yeah. And so over your extensive career, what significant advancements have you observed in joint replacement surgeries and how have they influenced patient outcomes?
There have been multiple things that have changed in joint replacement over the past 37 years. The technology of the implants themselves has really, I think, been brought to about as high a level as you're going to reasonably see. I don't think that what's been created over the past maybe 50 years or 60 years in joint replacement technology, I don't think you're going to have leaps and bounds of the same degree over the next 20, 30 years. And I don't think there have been tremendous changes in implants over the past 10 years. So I don't think that's going to change tremendously. The biggest change that I've seen in my career now is when I was a fellow in joint replacement, patients stayed in the hospital for about 9 days after a total hip or knee replacement. And when I started in practice 37 years ago, they stayed in the hospital about 4 or 5 days, and the vast majority of patients went to a rehab facility. And at the present time now, very few patients go to rehab facilities after surgery, probably 15%. Most of them go home. And there's a very large percentage, upwards of 40–50%, who are having total hip and total knee replacements done outpatient with no stay in the hospital at all, done at an ambulatory surgery facility. So I would say, if you were to ask me, one of the most dramatic things I've seen over time is the difference in the post-op rehabilitation and care of joint replacement patients.
Yeah. And what are some of those benefits? Because I know you've been performing outpatient hip and knee replacements at facilities like East Hills Ambulatory Surgery Center. What are some of those benefits for patients that are undergoing some of those joint replacements to do it at a surgery center?
First of all, early mobilization and getting patients moving quickly after total joint replacement is one of the basic tenets now of recovering patients. It decreases the chances of thrombophlebitis or blood clots in the legs, pulmonary embolism, pneumonia, other postoperative issues that can occur to get patients up and moving. And the advantage of outpatient ambulatory surgery is obviously that's mobilizing the patients very quickly afterwards. And for patients that don't require inpatient hospitalization due to various factors or medical history, it's a much more pleasant experience for the patient to have a total hip replacement or a total knee replacement done at 9 o'clock in the morning and be in your house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with your family and sleeping in your own bed and eating your own food and getting a good night's rest, as opposed to a hospital experience, which no matter what the quality of care is in a hospital, it's still not the same in terms of peace and quiet as being in your own home. So for the select appropriate patient, outpatient total joint replacement is wonderful. There are certain patients due to medical conditions and comorbidities that are not candidates for that, or they don't have a social circumstance where they can go home and be with a family member or someone else to help them in the first few days. They can't go home and be by themselves at home.
Yeah.
And with outpatient total joint replacement, they also have physical therapy and visiting nurse come to their home for the first 2 weeks in our program. And that's a great benefit also.
Yeah, that must be such a difference maker to have that as part of their rehabilitation, and especially in the comfort of your own home, right?
Exactly.
Do you feel like that gives, for lots of people or lots of patients, that gives maybe better results or quicker results for them, a quicker path to rehab?
I think if you look at data on this, most of the data now has been to show that it's just as safe to do this as getting it done in the hospital. I think in terms of, if you're going to look at patients 6 weeks post-op, if you were to randomize them to hospitalization and, excuse me, outpatient surgery, I think at 6 weeks, the results would be the same, basically. You just have to be careful. If you do go ahead and try to compare those two groups, you have to understand that you have to do that in a randomized fashion, because if you just do it by who gets it done outpatient and who gets it done inpatient, they're different patient populations now, and that would skew your data in an inappropriate fashion.
Yeah, wow. Makes sense. So how do you approach educating your patients about their surgical options and the recovery process to ensure that they have realistic expectations?
A lot of the patients start with me or my partners in my group. They start with us at an early stage before they may not need a total joint replacement. So there are treatments for osteoarthritis or similar conditions, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, injection therapy, physical therapy, lifestyle modification. But when a patient gets to the point that despite utilizing non-operative measures, they're having too much pain and disability, then they're an appropriate candidate for a total joint replacement. And basically, the education involves explaining to them what's involved with the surgery. We have implants in the office that we can show the patients and go over them what the surgery involves and what's involved in the postoperative course. And then also a reasonable discussion with them about the risk and benefits of the surgery and what they can expect down the road in terms of the survival of an implant and whether they would ever need to consider surgery in the future again if the implant were to wear out or loosen over time. That's more of a consideration for people who are quite young having joint replacements versus people in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah, wow. And I want to shift gears here a little bit and just talk about marketing here, because this, at the end of the day, is a marketing podcast. In today's digital age, how does Orthopedic Associates of Manhasset attract and retain patients? Are there any specific marketing strategies or channels that you've found that have proven effective?
Putting aside what everybody would consider marketing, there's no better marketing than a happy patient with a good result who goes out and talks to their friends, family, and associates about the excellent experience they had from start to finish. So I've always thought that's the number one goal. Without that, you can have as much digital advertising or print advertising as you want, but without good results and happy patients, you're not going to be successful.
Mhm.
Putting that aside, we live in a era now where there are all different ways to market any kind of business and medical groups to patients. So we utilize print advertising, TV advertising, radio advertising. We are present on Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
We have advertising signage sometimes in strategic locations. We also have that we make inroads with physical therapy groups and other medical groups in terms of letting them know what our physicians take care of, the areas we're experts in.
Yeah.
And sometimes events also, be them at running clubs or
Mhm.
various other similar kind of gatherings where, having a physician speak is something that increases their presence in the community as well.
Yeah. And you made such a good point there that there's nothing better than a happy customer. That's your best form of marketing. And then when you combine that with some of the channels that you're mentioning and amplifying that patient's voice, that's what really makes a difference. At least we've seen with some of our medical practice clients and whatnot. So it's really interesting. That's good to hear that you guys are really everywhere, and you guys have done those unique things too, where you might find some patients like running clubs and whatnot.
And then also newsletters to other physicians also.
Mhm.
It's a good thing we tout some of the research or academic work being done at your institution, and also the subspecialty knowledge that your providers have in terms of taking care of more complicated issues or problems in patients that a particular physician may not feel comfortable with and wants to seek out someone to refer the patient to.
Yeah. And I was curious about this. Has your practice integrated telemedicine services? And if so, how has it impacted patient care and accessibility?
During COVID, we did do some telemedicine services, and there are some physicians in our group who will, review an MRI or results with patients with a telemedicine visit. But with orthopedic surgery, it's very exam focused.
Yeah.
So you can't really make an assessment of a new patient with a telemedicine visit that's adequate. It can come down to something like distinguishing between sciatica and hip osteoarthritis. It's something that's not particularly difficult to do on exam most of the time. But I think if you try to tell people over a telemedicine visit that you need a total hip or you need to see a spine physician and have an epidural injection and think that's an adequate way to take care of patients, I personally do not agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think that was where my curiosity was really born, was from COVID. Yeah, that was really, that must have been really interesting for what
Yeah,
you.
I think the necessities of COVID and what happened during that sort of gave people some cover and stretched the limitations of telemedicine.
Mhm.
But I personally think it's probably mainly most applicable to some of the behavioral kind of treatments and things like that. And you really need to have hands-on with your doctor.
Yeah. And so, last question here. What guidance would you offer to medical students or residents that are considering a specialization in orthopedic surgery?
I think as a medical student, like everything, you certainly have the ability to do rotations on orthopedic surgery services. I think most medical students who want to become orthopedic surgeons, they'll do towards the end of their medical school years, when they're starting to choose residency, they'll do rotations on orthopedic surgery services at the different hospitals where they're considering doing their residency. You can't do an endless amount of those. It's not as if you could do 12 or something. So if you do about 3 or 4 rotations, if you can in your thing, and see what those hospitals are like and the services and the residents and how the residents enjoy their residency program, that gives you an idea of where to go for training. Deciding whether orthopedic surgery is right for you. Once again, you get insight into that during that time in your medical school. And the other thing is some training programs start out with a year that's not orthopedic surgery solely. It's going to be like the traditional rotating kind of thing. And that can give you a chance also to just be sure that it's right for you. And no matter what, there are people who switch specialties during their training period. They decide either what they're in isn't right and they want to be an orthopedic surgeon, or they're in an orthopedic surgery training program and they decide this isn't for me, I'm going to switch to something else. Nothing's cast in stone. You just have to keep an open mind in all directions.
Yeah, that's good advice for anybody. Dr. Bruce, thank you so much for being on. Where can people learn more about you?
We have a website, which is on either Spire Orthopedics or Orthopedic Associates of Manhasset.com. And you can also look at Spire Orthopedics, which has the platform that our group has joined with several other orthopedic surgery groups in the Northeast.
Awesome. Thank you. This was really informative. Great episode. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much.